Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. This episode's kind of been a long time coming, Asia. I think you and I have been connected for some time, and we talked a bit about your job search, which we're going to discuss here. But I knew as soon as you found that role that you were going to get in and crush that. I wanted to have you on and talk about it too, and talk about everything that you kind of utilized to get through the job search. So, thank you so much for taking some time to join me
Absolutely.
this
Thanks
episode.
for having me.
Sure, for sure. So if you're watching, listening, thanks so much for taking some time out of your whatever day it is that you're consuming this. So just kind of starting off for the week ahead, goals for the week, what I have going on. I've been talking about this for some time. So as you're watching or listening to this episode, I'm currently in our office in the Cincinnati area doing some stuff for our internship welcome program. So that's really like my goals, motivators, everything for the week this week is just kind of seeing this all come to fruition. It's been some months long processes for a lot of people involved within the company to do the hiring, the interviewing. We have about 15 awesome candidates that are starting an internship with the company this week for the next 10 weeks. So really excited to kind of show them what they can do with their careers, how they can utilize their degrees, things like that. So that's been the motivation for me, and it's nice because it's going to be a busy and hectic week, but then we have the 3-day weekend ahead, so it's nice to know that I'll have some time to catch up and collect my thoughts over the weekend after this whole thing is done. But really looking forward to meeting everyone. It's cool because I very rarely get to meet the people I interview and hire, so this week I'll actually get to meet several of those people, so that's going to be fun and exciting for me. So.
That's always fun.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in my world in terms of goals, motivators, and wins is that we made it here. We got to the finish line. The internship program has started, and everyone's got their equipment. Everyone's got an idea of where they need to be. So it'll be a cool few days that we get to do that. So that's my week. That's what I have going on. Asia, what's going on in your world this week?
Yeah, so pretty busy week for me as well. I'm a career service manager with the Stepping Stones group now. So what we predominantly do is we hire, well, for my segment rather, we hire behavior technicians, registered behavior technicians. If you have BCBA certification, we work on those. Um, we do hire for California right now. That's been a challenge for me because I've never visited California before and it's huge.
Yeah.
So this week we are looking for a BCBA for our Fremont area. And it's been a pretty hectic week with interviews and pre-screens and just trying to figure out, for the upcoming school year and the extended school year for August. So that's pretty much what my week consists of. And much like yourself, I'm looking forward to the 3-day weekend also to kind of
Yeah.
debrief.
Yeah. Always nice to have that on the horizon and know that, like it's just one of those built-in 3-day weekends where you can just kind of look forward to, hopefully the weather's nice. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy it. If not, you at least have that extra day off. So either way, it's
Right.
nice to look at that as a win for sure.
Much needed.
Yeah.
Much needed. Yes.
Definitely. So you and I have been connected for some time, and you and I had talked prior to you being on here. We've had a separate conversation, just kind of talking about your career goals,
Mhm.
aspirations, things like that. But you've been in recruitment and hiring for some time now, and I'm sure, as you know, everyone's kind of story of how they got into recruitment is very different. And
Yes.
there's very rarely that instance where someone said, "Oh, in college or right out of high school, I knew I wanted to get into hiring and recruiting." It's normally one of those
Yes.
more fall into. So, what initially drew you to working in the hiring and recruiting field, and what do you love about it now that you've been doing it for some time and you've kept looking for opportunities to stay within the industry?
Right. So, a little background for me, I've always been in client-facing roles. I started out in the hospitality industry. I worked everywhere from the gift shop. That's where I started. Worked in the restaurants, front desk. Then I moved into contracts. So a little bit more back end. So just working throughout all areas of the industry, it kind of I developed a lot of like customer service skills, everything on the front end, and it just made me want to become a part of the process because I loved hospitality so much. So I initially tried to enter HR through the hospitality industry But unfortunately, where I lived at the time in South Carolina, they didn't have any roles open. So that put me back into the market where I was able to find my first recruiting role with BNY Mellon.
Mhm.
Never at that time didn't have any recruiting experience, but I had many, many transferable skills that allowed them to see the vision along with me. I had the customer service, the multitasking, the organizational skills, problem solving. I'm sure you can attest to that. Very huge piece of recruiting. And so, yeah, I would say that I absolutely love it. The best part of recruiting for me is just being able to connect people to their career goals. I know for me, I am terrible when I'm on the other end of interviewing. At least I feel like I am. And I feel like I get nervous. So for me as a recruiter, I really take joy in creating that space where my candidates always feel like we're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's how I went into when I went back into the market. That's how I was able to actually have a different approach. Being in the market for so long, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, I just really enjoy helping people and connecting into their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on the transferable skills, and that's a question that I get a lot too, coming from education into recruiting was,
Yes.
what are you trying to highlight? And for me, it wasn't so much of, these are the skills that I have that I know I can translate into something new, because there's always a lot of things, especially being a customer facing role, like you mentioned, problem solving, conflict resolution, communication, all those things that you do on a daily basis. But not necessarily
Mhm.
things that you enjoy, especially the conflict resolution part of it, but those things that you have in your back pocket that you can point to. But when you were looking at recruiting, what were some of the things coming from those customer service positions that you more highlighted as I love doing this and I want to take this to the next level and grow and develop this skill a little bit further, getting into hiring, recruiting, HR?
Yeah, so I'd say that in my current role, it's more sales, which is something that I've worked in sales before as a contract coordinator, but I didn't do the sale, if that makes sense. I just kind of did the contracts when the sale was completed. But I'd say that ironically enough, that's something that I would say that I really do enjoy now. If anyone that knows me always knows that I'm always like, I'm not a salesperson. It's not my thing. But in this current role, and probably a little bit in my previous role as well as a recruiter, you are kind of selling the
Yeah,
job
yeah,
to the candidate. And, in this role, as opposed to my last role, um, there were more where people were applying to the position, whereas in this particular role that I have now, I'm doing more cold calls. So
mhm.
I'd say that that's something that has drawn me even further to the HR side of things, in addition to connecting the candidates with their career goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned your career services manager now, so it's a little bit more focused in terms of the positions that you're hiring for. And I went from industrial recruiting into healthcare recruiting, and I know that initially you go in, your recruiting is recruiting. Sure, I could do this, and then there's so much that you need to
It's
learn and
different,
get familiar with. The
so
different
different.
certifications, different skills needed in that. And so, what would you say are some of the similarities between the role that you have now and your previous role in contract coordination and recruiting? And what are some of the biggest differences? What's been the big learning curve for you to get
Yeah.
comfortable?
So some of the similarities, or the biggest one rather, is it's still full cycle recruiting. So I still handle everything from start to finish. I'm starting with the pre-screens and I'm closing the deal. Still scheduling all the interviews and things of that sort. So it's very similar in that aspect. But again, it's more cold calling as a career service manager. We do have some people that self-attach, which is also basically considered they've applied to the position. But for the most part, it's a go-to market, the market that I'm in now, whereas at BNY Mellon as a recruiter, everyone wanted to work there. So it was really, I would have over 100 applicants
Yeah.
most days. So those are the main differences between the roles. Also, this is a commission-based role that I'm in now, whereas before I was not. And I'm assuming it's because it's more of a go-to market.
Right.
Some of the other similarities are that I'm able to have these conversations with the candidates about growth trajectory in the business because there's so much things that you can do. And even if a position is considered entry level, much like BNY Mellon, there is always the opportunity for a lot of growth. So I'd say that both companies are very similar, and both companies and both positions give a lot of support
Mhm.
to the employees.
Yeah, absolutely. So being in recruitment, I'm sure you're well aware. The industry itself has seen a lot of reorganization, and the positions have been severely impacted and restructured roles. These past 2 years have been kind of chaotic for anyone in hiring and recruiting. And for you, as someone who searched for a new opportunity within that time frame, what were some of the things that you took from your time as a recruiter, being on the other side of the interview table, and how I can utilize what I've learned, what I've looked for to kind of help me as I'm searching for a new position? Because people think, oh, you were in recruiting, it'd be no problem to find a new job, and not the case. So,
Right.
so what were some of the things that you really did try to highlight during that time to help you make the right decision for your next move?
Absolutely. So for me, the biggest thing was I LinkedIn. When I first started my job search from contract coordinator to finding my first recruiting position, I maximized on LinkedIn. I think I started it at that point in time. I think maybe it was 2020, 2021, with maybe 5 followers. So I started to build up my LinkedIn connections. So I would just continue as a recruiter. I know that most recruiters, I won't say all, but most recruiters have about 6 seconds that they're looking at your resume. So I made it a point to make sure that I tailored my resume to where all of the key points and the main parts of what they were looking for were there. Because I know for me personally as a recruiter, if I have to go and take time to comb through it, it just takes so much time. So it just made it so much easier to have everything right there. So I did a lot of resume tailoring. I also did a lot of professional development, which I know we're going to talk about that later. I also furthered, my connections. I reached out to you. I had many calls with other recruiters just to kind of say like, hey, can you look at my resume and see if there's anything that I should change if I'm looking for a position within your company. I was reaching out to colleagues. I knew that the technology recruiting space was very popular. I knew that recruiting was very popular. So it was really hard trying to find positions because I feel like whenever I got laid off, the time that I got laid off was like, as you said, a lot of companies were doing restructuring. So there would be anywhere from 100+ applicants. So I just had to try to figure out ways to make myself stand out. And a lot of that was keeping my open to work banner on. I know that that's like a huge controversial topic, but I definitely think that it's helpful to keep it on there, regardless of anything else, because I just think it's important to let people know that you are in the market.
Yeah, let's talk about the networking and your brand a little bit more too, because I think that's one of
Yeah.
the hurdles a lot of people have. And you mentioned it yourself. You started with 5 followers, now have, well over 1,000. And that certainly isn't like an easy thing to get to. So, what were some of the things that you did along the way to make sure that you weren't just gaining that network, building it, but also having meaningful connections? So you felt
Yeah.
comfortable going to people and saying, "Hey, I could use an eye on my resume. Hey, do you have any insight on this position or this company?" Things like that.
Right. So I spent a lot of time working on my LinkedIn account. I would just take a look at, other people on LinkedIn and see like, what are some things that they're talking about? What are some things that are engaging? So I would post a lot. I'd make myself more personable. So I would, talk about a little bit about my personal life on there. I have children. I made an article about that. And that article is actually what helped me land my
Oh,
job at BNY Mellon. A recruiter saw that article and she reached out to me, and that's actually what opened the door for that job. So just tailoring my LinkedIn account to make it more engaging. So I worked on I think it's the about me section, the headline section, just again posting a lot, engaging with other people's posts, not just sending connections, but also reaching out and saying, hey, I see that you're in this industry. Can you tell me some things about it? Do you have any advice on how to get into that industry? Just different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think authenticity is kind of one of those things that people do look for on any profile. And that's always the advice I give too is, however much you feel comfortable sharing, but people are more willing and wanting to see that type of content as opposed to,
For sure.
the standard stuff that you're seeing across the LinkedIn feed that gets you the likes and then not much else. So it's always one of the things that stood out about your profile is the substance and everything behind what you're posting.
Thank
So
you. And my partner, he's in the technology space and he does like film and things like that. And he's always telling me, you need to make more videos and talk more. And I'm like, yeah, you might be right, because I think that the more that you do engage and people can actually see, who you are as a person, professional and personally, it does help a whole lot as far as your connections on LinkedIn.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, also talking about helping and growing during this time when you were searching for your new opportunity, you took some time to pursue some professional development, obtained some
Yes.
certifications along the way, and that's a question that I'll get a lot, and I'm sure that you do too. What's the process? Can you recommend anything? And for myself, as someone who hasn't really taken the time to do that, I'm usually just referring them to others who have. So now that I have you as someone who did take that time to pursue these certifications, what was that process like for you? How did you go about finding the right ones that were going to fit into what you wanted to do, what was going to benefit your career progression?
Right. So when I went through the company restructure last year, I took a step back just to kind of see what my career goals were from being a recruiter, because I knew that ultimately that wasn't where I wanted to land. Had many conversations with, again, my partner. He's in technology, and he's like, we talked about some of the things that I did in my previous role as a recruiter. And one of those things was I actually helped spearhead a couple of projects that helped to make the process smoother. And he's like, oh, well, that's kind of similar to what a Scrum Master does in technology. So I took the first certification that I took while I still had time off in the market, looking for a job in the market, was the Scrum Master certification. And the reason why I took that one is because it teaches you the fundamentals for agile methodologies,
Mhm.
which in a lot of tech companies or even fintech, finance, healthcare, all of the companies now, everything, as we all know, everything's moving to technology. Everything is becoming automated. So having the knowledge of how, if I ever needed to, be a little bit flexible and know the front end and the back end, because for me personally, I feel like the front end, I have that. I've worked in just about any customer facing role that you can think of as I started working at the age of 15, I believe. So I've always been in customer facing roles. And so now getting the two safe certifications that I have, so Scrum Master and Product Owner, now I'm able to know like, hey, on the back end of things, as a recruiter, I see we're using this ATS system. And I think if ever asked or if ever presented the opportunity, I can say now, hey, I have a certification in this, and I feel that this will make the process a lot smoother. And I have the knowledge because I'm doing it. And I also have the knowledge on the back end to know like this would actually create a better process for the recruiter, which would also create a better process for the candidate as well. And obviously, you and I both know that the candidate experience is really important.
Mhm.
And for recruiters, it's important for us to have a smooth process because it prevents the burnout that we may feel. So that how I got to get those certifications, because I might have gotten lost in there. But how I came about going to get those certifications is I had that conversation with him, and we were just trying to figure out what avenue I wanted to take if HR didn't work out for me as a recruiter, because again, it's a market that everybody is in, that everybody wants to be in. And it was also a market that took the biggest hit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find a way to be able to add value to a company outside of that. And that was getting the certifications allows me to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, beyond adding value to a company, a lot of times when people are interviewing, they need to start looking at, how the company is going to add value to them and assist. And people who are connected with you, follow you, can see right off the bat, it's in your headline that you are a strong proponent of mental health in the workplace, a strong supporter of DEI initiatives. So how did your passion and making those a priority as part of your search play, and what kind of questions were you asking during the interview process to make sure that the goals that you have aligned with what the company goals were, in particular, focusing on those initiatives?
Right. So one of the biggest things that's important to me, which goes back to the article that I have on LinkedIn, work-life balance. I'm a mom of two. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I just feel that it's really important to be able to have that work-life balance to avoid the burnout, and to also make sure that I'm showing up as my best self in my professional and my personal life. So one of the questions that I do ask in the interviews is always, what does work-life balance look like for that manager? Because they can tell me what it looks like for the company, but knowing how they personally feel about the work-life balance helps me a lot to know, if it aligns with me. I also ask questions about, like what type of resources they have for their employees when it comes to mental and wellness. So for one example, the company that I currently work with, they have a wellness stipend.
Nice.
And if we want to, go to the gym or buy something like a workout DVD or workout equipment or a massage even, we could go and do that and we'd be reimbursed for it up to a certain amount of money. So those are some things that I ask about because, as to your point, I am really big on mental health.
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's some fantastic advice, and that's a perfect segue into my last question. It's the one I ask everyone who joins me on this show, is just kind of that advice that you either received along the way that you've kind of felt that was very beneficial to you throughout your career, or if someone comes to you, Asia, I'm looking for something new. What would you suggest? Where do I start? What's that key piece of advice that you usually either try to rely upon for yourself, or that you give to others when they're asking you for support?
Yes. One of the things that I was told, when I was back into the market was, again, being authentic. You know, everyone, I think that you can always go into the interview, especially if it's a position that you've had and you have a lot of experience. You can always go into the interview and say, hey, this is how I can make you money. This is what I can do. But just being authentic, being personable, that takes you a long way. Making sure that your resume is tailored to the position that you're applying for. That open to work banner, I struggled with that a little bit. My partner and I were, he was like, no, he doesn't think it's a good idea. And then I thought it is a good idea. So that's another thing that I would say to some people is I really genuinely believe having the open to work banner is helpful. I also believe in advocating for yourself. That's something that I'm learning more and more as I go deeper into my career in HR, is that you have to take up space. You have to, and what I mean by that is you have to, be upfront and honest about things that you may see that aren't creating that work-life balance for you, or if you see there is a need for process improvement somewhere, there's a way to respectfully relay that message over. So those are some things that I'm learning in my current position right now as well that I wish I had known beforehand. But as I get more and more into my career, I'm learning and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Asia, thank you again for taking the time to jump on here with
Yeah.
me. I'm glad you found the position that you enjoy and that you're thriving in already. And I'm looking forward to what you do next. And so if you're not connected already, make sure you're sending that request on to Asia. Thank you so much, everyone who watched, who listened. Appreciate you taking the time. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you.